All right, this is a really quick little video on how to make a clipping mask. So you'll see that I've got all this work that's done underneath. Let me just turn all that off. We don't need to see it because we've got a top left image, we have a top right image, we have a bottom left image, and we have a bottom right image, and they're all the same. But to make our pop art, we have to make them stand out. So all four of those should be unique and individually colored. So we could leave the top left image all on its own, but I will do the same technique that I do to all four images as I do to the first one. So I select my top left image and I go down to the adjustment layer and I select hue saturation. Now you'll see that if I drag this all the way down, I can affect just that one layer, top left. And the reason that that happens is because this hue saturation layer is actually on top of everything underneath it. Well, if I turn that eyeball off, you can see that it's all empty, but if I turn all those eyeballs on, this hue saturation layer affects everything that it sees. Let me turn that all off, turn that layer back on. So we're going to get into clipping masks in just a second, but let me now go to the top right image, this one right here. I'm also going to go down, selecting that layer, of course, to the adjustment layer icon and a hue saturation adjustment layer. And instead of dragging it all the way over to the left, I will drag it about halfway. So here's 0, here's minus 180, so around minus 90, somewhere in that area. Here's the problem. When I turn this off and on, you could see that I have affected both the top right layer and the top left. So what we have to do to respect that these pixels should only be affected by, or sorry, the top right image should only be affected by this saturation layer, and this top left image should only be affected by this hue saturation layer, is we go to this layer, the hue saturation adjustment layer, right click, so we'll do this right here, and we say clipping mask. Now, a clipping mask means that it will only affect the pixels that are directly above it, the one that it's being clipped into. So this hue saturation adjustment layer will only affect the top left image. Let's go here and we'll just right click, and we have to right click not on the words. Let me say that again. We have to right click not on the thumbnail, not on the mask, but somewhere over here. You can click right over top of the words, clipping mask. There we go. Now look, this hue saturation adjustment layer is only affecting our top right image. So we go to our bottom left image, put a hue saturation adjustment layer above it, right click over here and say clipping mask. And now when we move this one, and we'll move this to about plus 90, you can see that it only affects the layer below it. I could right click and say, see how there's a check mark on the clipping mask? If you click again, it will take that clipping mask off. And now it's affecting all three layers that are underneath it. So we'll just right click and put the clipping mask back on, go to the bottom right image, to the adjustment layer, hue saturation, right click, clipping mask, change this all the way over here. So we are now only affecting the image directly below it. Clipping masks are wonderful in another way that we can work with them. Let me just go File, Open, and we'll just open any old image, one from my desktop maybe. Yeah, here's the original image. So this one right here. So let's say, and I'm just going to be crazy here, let's say, oh, I want to, right over here, I want to fill this space with clouds, Control 0, that come from here. So there's a really unique way to do this. Watch carefully. I'm going to go up here. Let me just move this, zoom in so I can move this over. I'm going to grab the lasso tool and I'm going to click and I'm going to drag all the way through here. And from here, I'm going to say Layer, New, via Copy. So on top, you can see that the only thing that is in that layer is the hair. Now, this is going to be crazy, but I'm going to duplicate the background, and I'm going to move that background above that piece of hair. On this background copy, I'm going to right-click and say Clipping Mask. And you're like, okay, nothing has happened. You can see nothing's happened. Well, if I take this background copy now and I grab my Move tool, make sure Auto Select is off, grab my background copy, watch this. I'm going to grab from the cloud and I'm going to move this over. I'm moving pixels that are only present in this layer right here. So even though I've got a whole layer above it, I'm only moving the pixels as they exist in the layer below it. So I'm going to go Command T, stretch this out. You'd be like, why are you doing that? And then on this layer right here, this one, I'm going to put a mask, use a brush, paint with black. Remember, black conceals, white reveals. Blend mode is normal. Size of the brush, we will make the hardness 0. Make sure we can see the brush. There we go. And as we fade this back in, I'm doing this really quick. If I had more cloud there, you'll see that if I spend the time to get a good mask on this, I then select my background copy layer again, grab my Move tool, and I can move this around in that space. And I'll go Command T for this one again, stretch this out, move this down. And you can see I've got a building back there, but I'm not going to go through all of the editing on this one because I think that'll take too long. But now I went from here. Well, maybe I didn't do a very good job on that one. Oh, it's just my masking. It's just my masking on this one here. And you can see that my masking didn't quite cover enough. But the point is that you can go through this and you can actually edit that in. Okay, I hope that helped you with understanding how masks work. If you have any other questions, feel free to send me a message.